Good afternoon, friends. We are sad that you couldn't be with us at Envision this weekend. And so I thought I would share with you some of the words that we used to kick off the day. Now, the great irony was, of course, that I started this very talk with, "Aren't we glad you aren't watching me on video right now?" And you all get to watch me on video. So I will try my best to help this feel like you were with us. But if we're honest, I won't remember what I'm going to say if I don't kind of read and all those things. So I'm going to sip my coffee and I'm going to share some words with you that I hope send us off into the year and you off into asking some good questions about your leadership and what you might be called to this year. We're really excited about this year. Obviously, if you're watching this, it hasn't started the way that you wanted it to. It hasn't started the way any of us wanted it to. I really wanted to go canoeing with all of you to kick off the year. But what I learned last year is that we know how to make the best of it. We will figure out what the limitations are. We will work around the limitations and we'll do really cool work that transforms lives around faith and spirituality and solidarity and service and justice and engaging difference and pluralism in interfaith work. It's going to be a good year. When I was a first year in college, our topic for my major's creativity and culture class, which was required for my core, was liminal spaces. I asked everybody in the room what was liminal. It's one of those weird words that some folks know, like English majors. I didn't know it till I took this class. And of course, someone was able to say in between. And that's the perfect summation of the word liminal. It's an in-between space. Liminal spaces are like doorways. In my residence hall, my first year, it was a big old brick building. It had this really wide hallway. And it was a residence hall that included not just first years, it was a mix of first years and upperclassmen. So I had a friend across the hall and a couple friends at the end of the hall. And so what we quickly learned was we spent time in the hallway, which is like a strange concept. You think particularly in a residence hall, you'd spend time in somebody's room somewhere comfortable, like with furniture, because the hallway had no furniture. But we would just start a conversation and pretty soon we'd be leaning on the wall. And 20 minutes later, we maybe slid down and sat on the floor. And then all of a sudden, 2 hours later, we're still chatting and laying all over the floor. Even still, I love a good in-between space. I love to pop to a colleague's office in the CFJ and kind of lean on the door and chat a little bit. And usually I stay for longer than I intend. When I was a first year in college, though, and I had to take this class, as you do with the things that are in the core, I thought this topic was really silly. We had to read a bunch of coming of age stories and we started rituals in different cultures that marked the passage of time. I didn't really get how all this applied to me, except obviously, duh. I'm sure this is what the professors thought, duh. All of the first year students had just made a major life transition and they were trying to help us contextualize that transition while also teaching us about interdisciplinarity. What's funny is now, all this time later, away from that first year of college, at this perspective in my life, I'm grateful that I spent time in community and with critical thought around this topic of in-between spaces. More of my life has felt liminal than I would have ever expected. Passing from semester through semester, in undergrad and grad school, needing constant discernment about my future during my first job and the future of the congregation I was serving, moving across the country, rebuilding social networks in my hometown, becoming a parent, my parents aging. And these were just personal transitions. When I widen my gaze to include the whole community and the world around me, all I can see is liminal space, the space between visions for racial and economic and environmental justice and how we actually live. The space between violent traumatic events and healing. Wondering what the next century of faith community will be like, watching wave after wave of the pandemic unfold, taking my mask off and putting it on and taking my mask off and putting it on again. As you look at your life, both at what's in the past and what's around you now, what in-between times have you lived through? Are you in an in-between time right now? These in-between spaces, whether they're in our personal or communal experiences, they're exhausting. They take all of our energy, all of our strength, all of our resolve, all of our faith, and all of our hope. We need strong relationships and strong community to use these in-between times as opportunities to build the future that we want to live into. We are living in a moment that has highlighted the not yet there qualities of our society. We have increasing clarity on what the common good requires, increasing clarity on what a truly just, diverse society could really look and feel like. And we also have increasing clarity on the major gaps between that reality and our vision. We've also seen so clearly how our futures are bound up together. We cannot address the racialized history and injustice of our society without doing it together. We cannot address the deepening climate crisis without broad-based collaborative action. We will not find our way beyond the waves of COVID without working together. And the kind of together we need has to go beyond people who think like us, people who agree with us, people whose values are the exact same as ours. The kind of together we need must cross cultural and religious boundaries. The kind of together we need must transcend physical borders and include those whose futures are bound up with ours, but we fail to see. The kind of together we need cannot be top-down, legislated, planned, or paid for. The kind of together we need has to look different than it ever has before. Today's theme is bonding and bridging. To be a healthy society, we need spaces where we feel bonded together, often with some kind of similarity, be it shared experience, shared culture, shared values, shared vision. But we also need bridges between bonded communities across differences that can feel impossible to navigate. Sociologists Putnam Feldstein and Cohen explain it this way. Some networks link people who are similar in crucial respects and tend to be inward-looking, bonding social capital. Others encompass different kinds of people and tend to be outward-looking, social capital. Both bonding and bridging social networks have their uses. Bonding social capital is kind of a sociological superglue, whereas bridging social capital provides sociological WD-40. If you get sick, the people who bring you chicken soup are likely to represent your bonded social capital. On the other hand, a society that only has bonding social capital will look like Belfast or Bosnia, segregated into mutually hostile camps. So a pluralistic democracy requires a lot of bridging social capital, not just the bonding variety. But I also find that as a person, an individual, I need bonds and bridges too. I need communities and people with whom I don't have to explain myself. And without spaces where I can or have to explain who I am, I'm not sure that I would know who I was. That's a little messy to follow. It's a little too abstract. So let me explain this way. I grew up in the same Presbyterian church for most of the time before I left for college. I came and went from the congregation. As an adult, I was ordained there and I baptized my children there. I appreciate that still when I visit, the elementary school secretary I grew up with is in the pews. She's probably close to Father B's age. I appreciate that the shop teacher who taught me how to do hard things and work with power tools still calls me little bit every time I come to church. But it took disagreements with that community, leaving even, for me to be able to articulate my own faith and find my own voice. It took experiences with people of other faiths for me to realize how the tradition of my childhood had shaped me. It took a friendship with someone of a different faith for me to realize I could be brave enough to pray in my own ways. It took education where I constantly had to consider what it meant to be Presbyterian for me because no one else in the room was Presbyterian. That's when I realized how Presbyterian I really was. This is what we hope for you at Xavier, that you don't just find but build communities where you feel a sense of bonding. Maybe it's a group that shares your favorite activity like singing or rugby, or maybe it's a group of people who share your same faith, similar experiences, or similar cultures. Maybe it's a group with the same passion, shared passion like sustainability. Maybe it's just a group of people that felt right. But we want you at the CFJ to approach community with intention and with the skills to build the community that you want to be a part of. We also want Xavier to be a place where you learn bridging. Maybe you try an activity you've always thought sounded fun, but were never brave enough to do. Maybe that community that you love so much collaborates and creates a whole new space that you could have ever imagined on your own. Maybe you join a group where you assumed you would feel out of place. Maybe you bring together parts of your life or experience in ways you didn't know you could reconcile. Maybe you learn from someone different than you or collaborate with someone you don't always agree with. The world needs you to be able to do both of these things. If you become skilled at both bonding and bridging everywhere you go, your experiences of communities of both similarity and difference will be rich and adventurous. Together, we want to build a world that is just, a world that is inclusive, a world that is sustainable. Bonding and bridging will be required to get there. So throughout Envision, we talked about this in different ways, and I'm not sure we even defined it in the same way throughout the day. And so you won't be able to spend the time in person doing the activities that we did, but we hope that you might be able to look at some of the materials and at least have some reflections and some thoughts on these themes that you can bring back to your teams. We hope that this is a year of building community and engaging difference, that we find ways to exceed our own expectations, even our own imagination in the best way. So I want to close with some words from Dorothy Day, our namesake. She said, "Whenever I groan within myself, and I think how hard it is to keep writing about love in these times of tension and strife, which may, at any moment, become for us a time of terror, I think to myself, what else is the world interested in? What else do we all want, each one of us, except to love and be loved in our families, in our work, and in all our relationships? God is love. Love casts out fear. Even the most ardent revolutionist seeking to change the world, to overturn the tables of the money changers, is trying to make a world where it is easier for people to love, to stand in relationship to each other. There can never be enough of it." I know that this year you all will build a campus where it is a little easier for people to love. And I also know that in all the years and decades to come, you will do the same for the world. Thank you so much for your gifts, your talent, your energy, and your leadership this year.